Hello everyone, Static, my own worst enemy here. 2023 may have brought us easily some of the best material of the decade so far, especially as the months rolled past and we got towards the end. However, that doesn't mean that there weren't some blemishes throughout this 12-month span. Whether it be some of the biggest artists of our generation making some platinum-selling albums that may, just sound like Today, I will be cataloging my personal picks of some of the worst that this year had to offer. We will be counting the top 25 worst albums of 2023. Alright, so here's how this is gonna work. I will play you guys a snippet or two from each album as we go, so that way you guys get an idea of what the album sounds like, what it's about, all that stuff. And then, I'm gonna go in and talk about what makes the album terrible in my eyes. Alright, no further delay, let's go. Kicking the list off, we have Remark with The Sound of Dead Hope. Now, I want to make this very clear that I have nothing against Remy, the guy who created this album, since I'm kind of from the same site that he's on, so I just want to say, Remy, if you're watching this for whatever reason, I really do want the best for you with your music. I really want to see you succeed, but this, nah, sorry man, no, this ain't it. Production sounds terrible. It's understandable since, it's homemade and all that, but there's countless examples of amazing sounding albums coming out of people's bedrooms. So to me, that's not really too much of an excuse for me. His vocals sound really lifeless and bored on here. He sounds half asleep on some of these songs, honestly. Especially doesn't help that a majority of these songs literally sound straight up rip-offs of bands like Korn, Deftones, Linkin Park, the list goes on. But yeah man, I really do hope your next outing goes better, Remy, because yeah, no, sorry man.
Together, gang.
God, it really hurts. It really, really hurts seeing how badly the Brockhampton boys have gone so downhill ever since their messy breakup last year. Merlin Wood sees himself joining up with former member and also abuser, keep that in mind, Ameer for a full album. Even though it's 20 minutes, but whatever. That album being this. And it is so awful. Ameer and Merlin have somehow essentially gotten negative charisma between each other. It is nowhere near as seamless as the Saturation days. You can just feel how much they hate each other, which is so baffling to me because some of my favorite moments from those albums are when they would bounce between each other, like on Heat, Gold. This album has none of that. It literally has none of that, which is so sad. Also, I want to mention the production really quick. Connie, the executive producer of this whole thing, and the guy who basically for every producer tag you hear is little "Connie, are you fucking kidding me?" thing. Quite possibly one of the most annoying producers out there. All of his beats basically sound the exact same. The only beat from him that I somewhat enjoy is Jalil's Dive In, but even then, Jalil basically carries that whole thing with how fun he is. This album has none of that, basically. There's not a single song here that I would ever consider myself revisiting. It is so bad. I'm praying this isn't what's to come for these boys. I'm hoping this is just a bad one-off, because my god, the future is not looking bright with this being a representation. Also, go fuck yourself, Ameer. This year I really did try being nicer to Coi, unlike a lot of other people. I feel like a lot of people have been kind of really harsh on her ever since she was on XXL with her very inspired performance. But still, I did try to be nicer to her. Back in 2022, I enjoyed some songs she's put out, and she's had a couple songs from this year that I even enjoy a little bit. I mean, they're a bit too generic for my personal taste, but, there's something. I enjoy them. them. I see the appeal in them. I'm down for it. But my god, this album completely destroyed me when I first heard it. Coi has done the cardinal sin that a lot of washed up artists have been doing recently. That is relying on interpolations to get by. For instance, My Body and Fuck It. Those songs interpolate Leslie Gore and Daft Punk, respectively. Completely relying on nostalgia bait to get you to enjoy these songs because, hey, it's a familiar song that you might like in the background, so you should enjoy this. But no, they sound like complete and utter horse shit. They are easily some of the worst hits to grace this green earth in a long, long while. Granted, there are some normal trap songs on here, but they're just really so bland and boring. You're only really gonna pay attention to the real hard bad stuff on here, which, trust me, this album very much supplies in that department. Really abysmal stuff. I'm still trying to root for you, Coi. I really am, but never do this shit ever again.
Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, fax, rename it, touch it, bring it.
Sliming you out, sliming you out.
Hey mom. Yes, son? Can we have the new Drake album? Oh, son. We already have the new Drake album at home. The new Drake album at home.
I'm finna take off and rap like a rocket. Hop on a yacht in Miami and surf. Sliming you out, sliming you out.
You know, usually I'm not too opposed to this whole old guy sentimental shit, but god, Lukas Graham's newest album really did test my patience. It doesn't exactly help that they've basically seen almost no artistic evolution across their near decade-long span of their career as a band. They've been making the same peppy rock, dad rock crap that the radio market just doesn't exist anymore. So why the hell are they still here? Go back to 2015, guys, for real, because this ain't working no more, man.
It could be the way it was way back when. Sliming you out, sliming you out.
Alright, look, I'm taking my life in my own hands by putting this here, but let me make one thing clear, is that I do like K-pop. Some of my favorite albums of the 2010s were K-pop releases, and BTS, I think, has released some pretty good bangers, especially in their Love Yourself series. But good god, this EP is just so painfully boring and generic and just bad. It really is just bad. That's not really something I expect from a member of a group as over the top and, dare I say, as tryhard as BTS of all groups, but this EP really is such a slog, even with it only being about like 20 minutes or so. Even still, it really manages to overstay its welcome very, very quickly.
Gave you all the money, gave you all my hurt.
Sliming you out, sliming you out. Big 14.
Man, this was not a good year for Trippie. He went basically 0 for 4 this whole year in terms of good albums. This album being his first outing, and we should have taken warning because it is easily the worst of the year too. Perhaps even of his whole discog, honestly. His attempt of rage music on here is just so trashy, with awful beats, terrible features, and complete horseshit rapping and lyrics from Trippie. Which, I know I shouldn't expect much in that department, considering, you know, it's a Trippie album, but good god, these are easily some of his performances. It really sucks too, since I know he can do this rage sound so much better, because his album before this one, Trip at Night, I think is one of his best albums. So it's not like the sound is over his league or anything. It's such a shame, especially since I'm a bit of a defender for this guy and his music, but man, this year was not for him. Jesus Christ, dude.
Sliming you out, sliming you out.
I really did think I was free of this man, but here he comes crawling right back up. Basically the same issues that his last album had exist on here. Those being the album being really uninspired with its production, its basic ass lyrics, and honestly some of the worst vocals I've heard since Toads and I's Welcome to the Madhouse. But I mean, apart from that, it really is just a complete nothing burger of an album. There's nothing to make it stand out among the dozens of other Ed Sheeran wannabe clones that have popped up these many years. Can we just leave this guy behind? Like, please? Oh boy, we really doing this. Alright. Ado is an artist I struggle to get the hype for. Most of the material I've heard from her, especially coming for her Kyogen debut album and the soundtrack she did for the One Piece album last year. I suppose I could see the potential she has on some tracks on those albums, but I feel she completely loses me whenever she decides to do those ugly screams that just do not fit at all with the songs she does, and they just ruin them whenever they're on a song. On this new album, she decides to go for covers instead of originals, mostly for stuff like various Vocaloid hits and general J-pop standards. Good lord, these covers are so fucking bad. I don't even think it's Ado's fault. It's whoever mixed and mastered and produced this album. I legitimately think they need to be blacklisted from the industry. Seriously, the compression and mixing on this whole album is horrendous. I do not expect this kind of mistake from someone signed on to Universal of all labels. Also, Kiku Aishite cover, I legitimately think took half of my lifespan away. That shit is so terrible. I legitimately was in tears when I first heard it. I wanted to shut it off. If it weren't for like 2, maybe 3 decent cuts here and there, this would be way higher on the list, but it is what it is. Fuck this piece of shit groomer. Seriously, Dream is such a disgusting piece of shit person, and this EP does not make anything better with him. I was one of those guys that watched his videos like way back before he blew up in popularity, and the microsecond he took off, I could tell something was off about him right away. Something about his ego and constant narcissism just immediately made me absolutely despise him as a person. This EP is essentially that narcissism taking full form into an ugly 17-minute fuckfest that just makes his recent downfall all the more satisfying for me. I pray I never have to see his dumbass mask and his shit-eating grin ever again in my life, and deep down, I think everyone else is on the same side with me on this. F*** you, Dream. Soulja Boy album in 2023. Soulja Boy album 2023. How in the fuck? I can't hide myself. Dax has basically become the new Hobson, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Shitty attitude combined with fake sentimental crap, which makes this such a frustrating and downright manipulative listen from front to back. I have such a hard time fully believing anything this clown has to say, especially when he's trying to do this incel emotional shit. Just so gross to me, man. He's basically Tom MacDonald without the racism, and I just do not want anything to do with this man. Please, get him away from me. I got wasted cause I didn't want to deal with myself. Slamming you out, slamming you out. I really did think this was gonna be in the top 10. It was so close. God, there really was some shit this year. Look, I will be setting aside whether or not Melanie is guilty or not of her many accusations that she's had over the years. I do believe that she's guilty, though, for the record. I just want to make that very clear. However, for this, I will be focusing purely on the music. It's pretty easy since this album is absolute trash. It's easily her worst album aesthetically and production-wise. From the fugly-ass cover art to the beats across this thing that just sounds so terrible and over-dramatic. Mel's vocals sound like complete shit, even more so than her previous albums. Almost every song just wants me to gouge my eyes out with how overly quirky and try-hard they are. It's just an auditory nightmare for me personally. Also, I find it really funny how her cover art is basically just her trying to pull like some discount version of something like Bjork or Arca. It's such a cheap tactic that just does not do it for me and just makes it look shit, but whatever. More power to the people who enjoy it, I guess. I don't know.
Slamming you out, slamming you out.
Baby, what you think about getting out of here? Get you out of this bar, girl. Get the switching gears in my Chevy. There's a Yeti in the back with some beer. We can park in the dark, get a dirt road on. Whoa, whoa. Everybody knows how it goes. Kiss you in the moonlight, glow, sitting shoddy. Everybody sing along. This ain't a radio song. Fool. Yeah.
Slamming you out, slamming you out.
You know, I'm not really all that familiar with Avenged Sevenfold. I've heard a couple songs of theirs over the years. They sound pretty alright from what I've heard. But, sweet lord, what in the hell happened here? I suppose they attempted to do a little some avant-garde and experimental on this album, pushing boundaries and all that. Which, you know, usually I'm down for. I love a little experimental shit in my rock every now and then. But man, they really dropped one of the biggest, fattest wrenches in the works on this album, completely blocking out a majority of what I assumed made their albums before this one so highly regarded. Production sounds like complete shit. The compression on here just makes things sound really strange and not what I expect from a band this highbrow, high caliber. M Shadow's vocals across this thing just sound absolutely abysmal. Jesus, bro, drink some water or something. God damn. There are a couple bright spots where I kind of think I see the vision of what they were trying to go for on this album, but they are very fleeting and hard to come by, and that leaves a majority of this album to just sound really tone deaf and just a blabbering mess of an album that just leaves me confused and scratching my head by the time it's over. Never do this shit again, my guys. Alright, top 10. Let's go.
Slamming you out, slamming you out.
Roger Waters used to be one of my idols growing up. Pink Floyd was one of my favorite bands as a kid, with albums like Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and The Wall completely blowing my mind as a kid and showing me what music can truly be as an art form as opposed to just something to just put on in the background as noise at like a supermarket or something. With all that being said, Roger Waters can go fuck himself for making this piece of remake that no one fucking asked for. Seriously, imagine taking all of the subtlety and nuance of one of the greatest albums of all time and using it to fuel your man-child ego by getting rid of everything that made it special and replaced it with TED Talk type bullshit spoken word rants about how much you hate the modern world. Fuck this.
Breathe in the air.
Slamming you out, slamming you out.
What? How in the hell did this guy go from making shit like this to making this? The decline of Corey Taylor, and basically Slipknot as a whole at this point, is something that should be studied years down the line. The absolute drop in quality of their work. Basically ever since Corey and his son appeared in the Nostalgia Critics The Wall video, and yes, that did happen, has been staggering. This album absolutely being the bottom of the barrel that we've seen so far, because my lord, this shit is pathetic. as hell. When he's not trying to go back to his prime years that are well behind him at this point, he basically revels into this 50-year-old guy with an acoustic guitar sound that just does not fit him at all. It just sounds so corny. I'm really hoping this isn't marking the end of Slipknot, especially after releasing some of the best metal albums of all time back in their prime in the late 90s and early 2000s, because my god, it's gonna be a long ride.
Warning. Nuking is now legal worldwide.
Speaking of declines of groups that had it figured out years ago and I really like, let's talk about Spider Gang. Yes, I'm very much aware that Chris Dillinger is easily considered basically the worst member of the former group, and yes, I'm aware some of the other members had a pretty good 2023 all things considered, but good god, Chris Dillinger really stooped so much lower than I ever thought he could. This entire mixtape basically just sounds like if you took Rainbow Bridge 3 and just stripped it of everything that made that album so funny and just fun to listen to. The production sounds like shit. The bass on here is overblown and bass boosted to the point where it just sounds like Vine Boom ass beats, and this is all mixed with some of the worst flows and lyrics you will ever hear in your entire life. And it also doesn't help that DJ Smokey, the executive producer and the guy who hosts the mixtape for Chris, basically has a death grip on the entire aesthetic of this tape, which, I'm sorry, he's easily the worst part of this tape. He is the root cause of every issue I have with the production of this entire mixtape, and it seems that Chris has basically been signed to Smokey's label too, so it looks like we have a whole wave of more projects from him that'll sound exactly like this. I can hardly wait. I would say that's the worst Spider Gang has had it this year, but we'll talk more about that when we get later into the list.
And I can only hope that she finds a way to leapfrog what she's done here down the road when she drops more stuff. I'm feeling a decent to strong 8.
What in the fuck are you smoking, my guy? And please, can I have some? This tape is so terrible. Everything wrong about modern trap is combined full force into this one fugly ass mixtape. Terrible one-liners, one of the most annoying and nasally flows and vocals of possibly the whole decade. It's honestly amazing to me that people are calling this the best trap album of the year and one of the best female rappers of the decade, because good lord, our standards have truly sunken to an all-time low. Is this the beginning of the decline and eventual death of trap music? I suppose time will tell, but I would not be surprised if that ends up happening with how things are going right now, because my lord.
There's exotic, I look cute when I'm smoking weed. Track hawk, say he wanna
Sliming you out, sliming you out.
This music right here is hard banging, partying. I don't give a loud.
Okay, this might require context for some people, since I'm going to assume that none of you watching this know who the fuck this guy is, so let me lay the groundwork for you. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you don't know who this guy is, because it's not like this guy is like an upcomer off of like Def Jam or anything like that. No, Wyatt is a special case. He's a guy who earlier this year blew up a little bit on TikTok for saying a bunch of outlandish shit about he's one of the best rappers of all time and how he's better than Kendrick Lamar or Tupac or Eminem or your favorite rapper or whatever the and spamming his music in a bunch of music forums, not being all that receptive to negative criticism, and also spamming the live chat of Fantano as well. I get the idea behind it, right? Chasing the bag, getting as much promo for your shit as you can. I respect it, okay? I'd probably do the same if I was in his case. I just wish the music was good. Wyatt repeatedly is rapping way too fast over these beats. He's racing the beat to see who can get to the end of the song faster. His writing is so cringe and so derivative of just, I'm a white rapper in the black genre, look at me, woo. It is so just laughable. It's like he spent his entire life listening to Eminem and only Eminem, and he only picked out the worst traits of his music to build his own stuff off of.
My friend fought demons over them, couldn't see monsters in him, but I guess they're like the Loch Ness.
Sliming you out, sliming you out.
And I really hope we can see more unity and more peace when already things are so difficult. So, shout out
my friend Peruka for bringing this album into my life. Sweet Lord have mercy. Fixed Swing 2 is a barrage of sonic bombardments that will leave anyone with ADHD convulsing on the floor, foaming at the mouth. Every beat is the same loud ass wall of noise and saxophones that go into a trap breakdown at some point, and then a monotonous key change at the final chorus. Every single song. Despite being only 30 minutes long, this is truly a Sisyphus-style challenge to make it through the whole experience, and I emerged a truly changed man by the end of it. I will never be the same after listening to this piece of shit. I feel nothing but pain.
Slamming you out, slamming you out.
And here it is, folks, the worst Spider Gang album ever conceived. Can't believe I stuck my neck out for this guy last year. A14 used to make some of the most groundbreaking and wild trap metal of the decade, from albums like Skenge, Audible Heroin, and especially Black Flamingo from last year, all of which I highly recommend for people who are into manic, wild as screaming noise rap. I guess for this new tape, A14 decided to trade all of that artsy, noisy aesthetic in exchange for sounding like dollar store yeet. For some reason, I don't know, the rage sound on here just sounds like complete and utter shit. Every beat is blown out, even more than the Dillinger stuff. Somehow, his vocals sound like a complete parody of the genre, and most of the features on here are so awful, they managed to make the experience about threefold worse. And it does not help that this is A14's longest album this far, clocking in at a little over 45 minutes, which in comparison, Black Flamingo is about 17 and Audible Heroin is about 16. So this tape has no excuse for feeling like a complete slog, because it is easily one of the worst Rage albums possibly ever. And if you decide to hear it for whatever reason, I pray for you, because you are in for an awful experience.
Slamming you out, slamming you out.
6ix9ine got his ass absolutely handed to him earlier this year, and ever since then, he truly has stooped so much lower than anyone could ever have thought. On Leyenda Viva, 6ix9ine basically abandons everything that made him so interesting back when he first blew up, and he resorts to making FIFA core reggae cuts that are just so abhorrent. It's essentially 30 minutes of pure guilt tripping to make you feel bad for Tekashi and to make him seem like a better person than he really is. But do not be fooled, he's still the same shitty person he's always been, and this album will forever remain one of the worst abominations to ever grace the Latin culture.
Slamming you out, slamming you out.
This right here's Run the Jewels for white trailer park, beer drinking, gun toting, flag flying, Trump voting, race hating broskies. Yeehaw, partner. That's all I should really say, but f it, I'm going in full detail. Rap game hemorrhoid Tom MacDonald teams up with rap game STD Adam Calhoun to make a near hour-long barrage of pure, unadulterated racism and transphobia. Basically everything toxic and awful about modern politics, especially those coming from far-right conservative nut jobs, is present on this flaming bag of dog shit. It's basically conservative bingo, with race hate, transphobia, homophobia, seemingly only exposure to hip-hop being Eminem. You get the full package, really. The only, and I mean only, reason it's not number one is that I refuse to give these guys what they want, since it is extremely obvious that these guys are just trolling for attention and farming off of conservative drones. Especially since, here's a little fun fact for you, Mr. Tom MacDonald isn't even from America. He's Canadian. Get your northern ass out of here, fucker. But anyway, yeah. I sincerely hope in the future that these guys will be nothing more than just a mistake, and that we will collectively just Men in Black style forget everything about these assholes once and for all. Alright, before we go to number one, here's a couple of honorable mentions that I wanted to put in here, but I didn't have room for them. But regardless, I still want to show you guys how terrible they are, so have fun.
For them kid choices you made.
Riding with my demons, I could take nothing back.
Oh God, you might see me in the same clothes.
Summer in the head.
Go.
Everybody say hey, hey.
See, they got police at the door trying to pat me down, so my project bitch brought a gun in me. Dick.
I life myself never.
I'm a minute talk, I'm on blacked up on drugs. But finally I feel better now. Off the ground.
Alright, glad we got that out of the way. Now, if you look back on this list of all these albums we've covered so far, you may find a little bit of a theme. You know, something that kind of connects them in terms of what makes these albums bad. Usually that may be because of something like, say, I don't know, bad production, shit lyrics, an annoying sentiment or attitude, whatever. But what happens when an album doesn't have any of that? What happens if an album is devoid of anything? An album so safe, so commercially friendly and tasteless, so devoid of any traits, good or bad, about it? What do you get? What would be the byproduct of something so unessential and unwilling to try anything? Well,
Slamming you out, slamming you out.
oh Cocoa Moon, oh Owl City, how I've dreamed of this day to come finally. Cocoa Moon is one of the most infuriatingly boring, uninteresting albums of the decade so far. It is everything so wrong with this cutesy, indie, millennial pop style, all distilled into one tightly package. It is so sterile and safe, it'll make the most commercial of mainstream albums look avant-garde and experimental in comparison. The vocals sound like crap. Adam is still trying to recapture the vibe of Fireflies, his biggest hit, while completely failing to do so. And the one thing I wish he would stop, he still keeps doing, which is desperately wanting to copy Give Up by the Postal Service. Well, guess what, Adam? With the exception of Fireflies, you will never have a song nearly as iconic and masterful as The District Sleeps Alone Tonight, or Such Great Heights, or Sleeping In, or any of those songs off of Give Up. But enough about that. Look at this album length, 55 minutes. Okay, that's a little bit long, but if it's like 16 or so songs, that's completely fine, right? Because, you know, quality over quantity. So, you know, at least it can't be that bad. Oh, it's 11? And they're all 5 minutes? Look at how long these songs are. Dinosaur Park is nearly 7 minutes long. It's literally a song about this. Not to mention the opener immediately pisses me off at the press of play by basically just being about getting a job at a dead-end supermarket place and just blabbering about how magical and exciting it is to work there. As someone who's worked at a supermarket for about 3 or 4 years now, go yourself, really. It's no. Cocoa Moon is easily my #1 pick for worst album of the year. No questions, no thoughts, no comments. At least the Tom MacDonald album is kind of funny and how pathetic it is. This is just nothing. I have no recollection of anything off of this album. It just avoids being remembered or something. It truly and honestly is the death of all art. There really is nothing to latch onto and like about it, really. Or hate about it to an extent either. It just kind of exists, and you know what? It will continue to exist here on this list on the #1 spot. Thank you all for joining me. Worst albums of the year. Here's to hoping the best list, and 2024 for that matter, are at least better than this shit, cause man, I gotta get some slack for this, man, bruh.